back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Umpteenth Time Hearing. I'm Bill, your host, bringing you yet another song from my little mental catalog of offbeat 80s music, hoping that what will once again be my umpteenth time hearing might turn out to in fact be your first time hearing something new and different, something you can check out and maybe find some other music like it, some more by that artist. Something new and different for you is all we're looking for here. Now, I may have misspoken just a bit at the end of the last program when I described this song as coming from the soundtrack to, now I did say, to the best of my knowledge, one of the first gender swap movies ever. I came across some piece of trivia in the meantime describing a 1960s comedy that was not all that well received as being the first gender swap movie. Didn't bother to fact check it and not really relevant. This is an early gender swap movie, and what I'm speaking of, for those who know anything about 80s teen movies, know exactly what I'm going to be talking about. That would be Some Kind of Wonderful, a virtual remake, at least in the general plot point sense, of the previous year's Pretty in Pink. And what's more, if it's not the first movie of this type, it's certainly the fastest turnaround on a gender swap by the same filmmakers, directed by both of them by Howard Deutsch, and both written by 80s teen movie king John Hughes. So that said, Some Kind of Wonderful was, in my opinion, and by most critics' judgment, the better movie, more well-acted, just more believable characters, I thought. But the soundtrack's kind of the opposite. The Pretty in Pink soundtrack not only did a lot of the songs speak directly to the issues, the teen issues of that film, but it was just a great lineup of alternative 80s musicians, from Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark to New Order, Susie and the Banshees, The Smiths, not Susie and the Banshees, Echo and the Bunnymen, The Smiths. Suzanne Vega had a song with Joe Jackson on piano, In Excess. It was just a classic. The soundtrack to Some Kind of Wonderful? Not so much so. I mean, I suppose for some who know some of the artists, I think I'd heard a little bit of the Jesus and Mary Chain, and the name The March Violets was familiar. I hadn't even heard of this group, Lick the Tins, that I'm going to be playing for you today, but their song was certainly the most memorable of those on that soundtrack. And I'm speaking of their cover of the Elvis Presley hit, Can't Help Falling in Love. Now, Lick the Tins themselves, they were only around for a few years in the mid-late 80s. They had one album. This was their big single, if you can call it that. I don't think it got all that high, held on for a few weeks, but not all that high on the British singles chart. Didn't make any impact in America. They had a couple of follow-up singles that didn't really have much of an impact. Toured a little bit longer, and eventually the band just broke up. And none of the references I look at, and there's obviously limited information, but none of them make a specific reference as to the year that the band ended. So founded in 86, probably 88, 89, I don't really know, and doesn't seem to be documented particularly well. So not surprising if you've never heard of them. One album from 40 years ago, 35 years ago, almost, and from one of those teen flicks of the 80s. It's not like there's any shortage of those in any given decade. But this is just a great song that's worth a listen. I mentioned the limited links. I do want to point out that there is a link below to a website by Mainly Norfolk that provides track listing information and the best comprehensive summary of sort of the background information, history of the band, and the chart of their limited professional career. So I highly recommend you check out that link. The song lyrics, as always, are posted down there on the top pinned comment. I've included the IMDb link for both of those movies, Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful, just because not much else that I can include for the links on this program. But while you're down there checking out those links, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate those likes. Click that notification bell if you want to hear about upcoming programs. And please add your comments below. But for now, I don't want to wait any longer. Let's get right into it. This is the London-based group Lick the Tins with their cover of the Elvis Presley hit, Can't Help Falling in Love. Enjoy. Okay, folks, and there you have it. Can't help falling in love like you never heard it before. Not your parents, Elvis Presley, or your grandparents, perhaps. Anyway, interesting thing about that song, though. The Elvis Presley version is, of course, much slower paced, longer, drawn out, luxurious, if you will. Whereas the Lick the Tins version is much more up-tempo, manic almost, got that driving penny whistle lilt going. The Elvis Presley original is 2 minutes and 59 seconds long, and yet the more up-tempo, rapid-paced Lick the Tins cover is 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Well, that is because the actual portion of their song that is a cover of Elvis Presley wraps up at about 2 minutes and 24 seconds. In the last minute and change of that song, well, that 2 minutes and 24 seconds, that was just too short for your standard radio play single. And so they added these 3 different polkas onto the end of it, their version of those, in order to make it long enough to be acceptable for radio play in England in the 1980s, I guess, or possibly even now, who knows. But that's the whole reason that bit was added on to the end of the song. Interesting question here. I really like that song. I think it's an excellent cover. Is it a great cover song? Depends on your definition of great. I mean, a really, really good cover song is a band making it their own and not just trying to sound like the original. And I think they certainly accomplished that here. But I think a truly great cover song, you have to do something more, something that makes it more than or different other than just style and tempo from what it was originally. Best modern example I can think of to give that is I would say that Alien Ant Farm's cover of Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal is much like Lick the Tins' cover of Elvis Presley. Alien Ant Farm makes it their own, a hard-rocking song, but does it have anything that makes the song that, other than that, it's really unique? Whereas I think Disturbed's cover of The Sound of Silence from Simon & Garfunkel not only is stylistically very different, but it's also very different for them, and it really adds, I think, to the depth and meaning of the song in the way that they do it. So, was this a great single? Not quite sure. But it's a lot of fun, and it's certainly the best single on that soundtrack. Now, coming up next week, I'm going to kind of go along with the same route here. I've got another single from a soundtrack, this time performed by the artist who's playing a musician in the movie. And that original musician's cover was, I'm going to have to argue, a great cover, and was thought to be one of the best performances of that song by the song's original writer. And there are a lot of people who have covered this song. It's a great performance from a great actor, someone that I've mentioned in a movie that I've mentioned before on this program, but I don't want to give away any more than that. So for now, thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of Umpteenth Time Hearing. I'm Bill, your host, hoping that once again, and as always, may the best of your past be the worst of your future. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Have yourselves a great day. Bye now.